I'm Randy Robison. This is Life Today, Digital Edition, and I'm here with a longtime friend and also a new author of a new book, Fight Forward, Brenda Crouch. Good to have you.
I'm so happy to be here, Randy.
How long have I known you guys, you and Paul, for quite a while?
Yeah.
And it's been nice. You need to come back to Dallas more.
I know, and do some more mountain biking.
I was going to say, I need to tell you, this lady can bike in some tough single track, if you know what that is, terrain. We tore it up. Yeah.
I like it.
Oh, let's go down the list on the back of the book. TV host, speaker, author, singer-songwriter, and it says nothing about
Mountain
Miss
biker.
Nevada.
Oh, well, actually, the Miss Nevada title was a kind of a sub to Miss America.
Okay.
So, that's why.
But regardless,
I don't claim
beauty
that.
pageant is missing from the back of the book, and
Yeah.
mountain biking.
Not really my claim to fame.
Okay. Which is, you know what, we're kind of laughing at that, but to see all the things you've accomplished, giving the way things could have gone, because early in your life was just terrible.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what you went through.
Well, you know, there was so many good things, and there was some secrets about bad things that early in my childhood, I was about 8 years old, I experienced the trauma of sexual abuse. And many times what children do because of trauma, Randy, is they will bury that, and they can bury the memory. So this was a suppressed thing for many, many years. But what happens is it fragments you. And often survivors of childhood sexual trauma will actually split within their own identity. And that happened to me. And so I was raised in a Christian home, which, you know, otherwise, you know, by all intents and purposes, there was some wonderful things about my family. We had music, we shared music, there was a lot of love, there was a lot of, we went to church together. I mean, I was just born and raised in the church. And so I have to back up and say that on my mother's side, my heritage was all pastors and missionaries and just a lot of stories, faith-filled stories that I believe really helped me, because my mother was so faithful at sharing those things. And she was really big on building our love for Jesus and building our faith. My mother did not know that the abuse had taken place until years and years later. And it was confirmed on my father's deathbed. My father went through a very dark time in his life that some people call that backslidden. You know, it was a time in his life when he had really run away from God, and there was infidelity, you know, in their marriage. And so my father was in a very dark place, and he was very angry. And I know that my father was also abused as a child. And so, you know, my real emphasis in this book is, and with telling my story, is not to just say, oh, me too, because I think we've got enough of that going on right now. I think it's really important that anybody who's been abused is able to come into a safe place of truth, step out into the light, and you need to say, you know what, this happened to me. So, but I believe that we've got to have answers to how do we heal this and how do we stop the abuse, because I see it many times, and most usually, as a generational thing. So what happened down the line in my father's side of the family ended up happening to me. And there are others in the family that I could tell you, but that's not my story to tell.
Right. You also say that you suffered, I saw in your book, religious abuse. What do you mean by that?
My mother really was the one that suffered from what I would call religious, legalistic control and abuse, where I think the types of things, I'll save the story for the book, but the types of things that absolutely crush the spirit because of control. And I think that it was by people who meant well, but she was so controlled that I understand how the dynamics played out between she and my father. And, you know, two brilliant people who were so gifted and musically, just both of them, just geniusly talented. And yet there were these hidden dynamics of emotional abuse and things that, growing up in my family, I thought those were normal.
Right.
But I didn't understand, and I didn't know that my father was emotionally distant. I didn't know that he didn't know how to really give me the blessing and teach me how to be a confident girl. So I spent my life, seeking after love. And the one thing that I really feel like I need to say is that when children suffer from childhood sexual trauma, they're forced to bond traumatically with good parent and bad parent at the same time. So then what happens is when you go into adulthood, you're carrying all that baggage with you of good, bad in the same person. These dynamics play out in your relationships. And so you will attract abusers because you so much need the love. You'll take a tiny little morsel and you will accept all the abuse for just that little morsel of what you perceive as love. And so I did that. And with the upbringing of this kind of religious, and I use that term a little bit loosely because, my mother was very sincere and she really did love Jesus and had a real relationship with him. So she wasn't trying to just be religious. But the legalism that was so instilled into her was also instilled into me. And so there was a performance level there that was about my relationship with the Lord. And of course, then this broken concept of what a father is.
Yeah, well, you've got two things that are working in diametrically opposed to one another.
Yes.
And you're having to reconcile them and deal with them.
So then I think that I took that into two abusive marriages, trying to make them work and being the sacrificial lamb.
Yeah, so you mentioned, you actually say in your book that looking back as you wrote the book, you wonder why you didn't get out of these situations sooner. And that's common, hindsight's 20/20. But I gotta ask you, when you got married and were driving down the coast of California to your honeymoon and messed up left the directions of the hotel or something, and your husband got angry with you and kicked you out of the car.
Yeah, on my wedding day.
On your wedding day, I mean, looking back, you can see how you would go, there's your sign.
Right.
You should have never gone back to that guy, right?
Yeah, and if I was the person that I am today and that happened, I'd say, okay, I don't care where we are in this stage. I don't care about how much money we spent. We're rethinking this because you don't do that.
No, you don't.
Yeah, I would realize that I'm valuable, but I didn't realize that I was valuable.
Is that the core issue right there?
Yeah, I think that I knew that cognizantly, but I didn't know it deep within my identity. And so, he kicked me out of the car, and there I was standing on a stretch of dirt road going, what just happened? Feeling about as awkward as anybody could feel.
Yeah.
And my grandfather had passed away that day, so it was already kind of an emotional day for me. Yeah. And I do think that we, in the healing process, I can look back now and say, wow, why did I not get that?
Right.
Like I would now.
I guess what I'm getting at is what do you tell somebody who may be suffering some abuse now, but yet is kind of in the mindset you were in, where they're not getting the help they need or not aware that the situation's as bad as it really is or just doesn't know what to do?
I would tell that person that deep inside that something's wrong because you're suffering from it and you're carrying the weight of it, and you feel responsible to make it all right, to fix it. And this is not something that you can fix. And I would encourage that person to begin to pray. If you don't know Jesus, you need to stop right now and ask him to be a part of your life and decide right now you can follow him from right where you are. You don't have to fix your life because that's what he is all about. He's about healing and restoring and renewing. But it's a process. And so I would tell that person that something needs to awaken on the inside of you.
Yeah.
And that's really what my journey was all about, was awakening. When we're living with that kind of abuse, there's a reason. There's something from our childhood or something. Not everybody was sexually abused, obviously, but the statistics are pretty high.
Yeah, alarmingly high.
Unfortunately.
Even in the church.
Yeah, exactly. And so, we're often shut down, and we don't realize it because we've learned how to function and operate on this kind of surface level where everybody thinks we're okay, and often we're not. So my encouragement is that people really begin to take that relationship with Christ seriously and let him just invade you and let him guide you. You need counselors. You need somebody that is safe, whether that's going to your church or finding an organization that helps abused women, a friend, someone. God sent those kinds of people to me.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what was your journey to where you're at now, to a place of health, because it could have gone really wrong for you.
Yes, and there were several pretty close calls where I had loaded guns held to my head, and I wondered if I'd live past that.
Yeah.
And instantly I began to pray. But I was just so full of anxiety at one point, and my world was crumbling, and I just didn't know how to hold it together. And I think that having my little girl is what really woke me up on the inside to say, wait a minute, because I loved her so much and I valued her so much that suddenly I began to realize this is abuse and it will happen to her in one form or another. And I cannot tell her that love does these things. So you see how suddenly the narrative began to change in my own mind.
Yep.
And I realized I needed help to figure out, what do I do from here? And there was a day when, it was the day I realized that, and I had experienced a terrible blow of abuse, physical abuse, violent. And I waited for him to leave, and I left all the material things because I knew that his love was for money and power. And so I thought, I just want my safety and I want my little girl. And so we left with some of our clothes. I left my wedding ring. I left all the things in the house. I didn't want them. All I wanted was my safety, and I wanted to heal. And so it was in that part of my life, I kind of fled from home, went and found a place to stay, and then I reached out to a counselor, and I didn't even have money, but as God would have it, he kind of ordered my steps, I believe, and this counselor took me on and just was able to work with me for what I could afford. And he was the one to really help me to begin to see things from a clinical and a spiritual aspect, because he was also a pastor of a church.
Okay.
But he was a licensed counselor.
Wow.
And so I thank God for those people. Listen, they're troopers. And we need to understand in the church that this is such it's a huge issue, even within the church, and we really need to not make it awkward or put shame on it, but to be able to create a safe place for people to just step into the light and to come clean of all of it and to dump the shame and to say, I want to heal, because they've been crushed and they've been hijacked to the core of their identity.
Interesting that you had to come to that place of seeking help and healing and really get a lot of that baggage gone out of your life to where you could function. It was after that God brought the kind of husband you'd always sought. So what year were you? You're married to Paul Crouch Jr.
Yes.
People may know the name. What year were you married?
2014. We got married. Yeah.
Okay.
We met in 2009.
How did that kind of closing of that circle just kind of bring a level of joy in your life?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, there were times that, and we knew each other for 5 years before that, before we got married. So that was like an off and on, seeing each other and dating and friendship. But, it wasn't this instant thing. And I don't want to give people the hope that, you leave one situation and then
but
God instantly
my
answers
my
it.
point is largely is that you don't leave a bad marriage to try to find the good marriage.
Right,
You leave the
right.
bad marriage to get whole.
Yes.
You leave the abuse so that
Yes.
God can heal you, show you your worth.
Exactly.
And you left with not, like you said, you
Nothing.
were stripped down to just what was really important, your safety, your daughter.
Right. Right.
And then God started adding the blessings.
Right. And what I had to learn, it was at the point when I came out to Dallas that, and I'm always going to love Dallas, by the way, because Dallas is where I healed.
You just come back.
Yeah, and the folks were so good here. But while I was in Dallas, I like to say that it was my Ruth journey, because I followed him. I followed his voice. He's the one that told me to come here. And I said, oh, Lord, you're going to have to confirm that one a few times, because I had missed it several times in my life, and I just didn't trust myself anymore. So I didn't want to over spiritualize things anymore like I had done. And so I just learned how to walk in his next to his heart and just listen and understand that and know that I'm hearing his voice. So I was walking in obedience. I came to Dallas. I didn't know what I was going to do, but God provided every step of the way. And I don't recommend that for everybody. It has to be the Lord directing you. But I believe that what he did is he took me out of the soil I was in to transplant me geographically, because he wanted to do another work in my heart. He had already been working for quite a few years, but this was a new work. And in that journey, he provided for me miraculously. I mean, I went back into interior design. I'm going to say 50% self-taught. And so, I had to just jump in. And here we are in a design mecca of Dallas, where there's a lot of competition, but God was blessing me. And he was providing every step of the way for what I needed. But he also used that to harden me to difficulties, because in the ways that I was too tender, too sensitive, and, I had to toughen up. And I think that part of my gift is that I'm sensitive and I'm compassionate. God uses that. But we have to know how to fight forward. And so God used certain circumstances to teach me how to encourage myself, how to keep going, how to keep the vision, and how to follow his voice. And in that, you're humbling yourself, because you're not doing it for your ego. You want to do it to serve your God and to glorify him. And I knew each time that praise would come out of my mouth instead of complaining, that I was growing. And I would just think, wow, I got through that today. It's amazing. And then he brought, he did bring Paul. And I remember at the time thinking, well, we'll be friends. He's a sweet friend. And when I realized I could love Paul, something really changed. And I prayed for him for quite a few years, and just had to be faithful, knowing that, when God's doing something, we can't rush it. And we try to fix things, and that's where we mess up.
And the husband was never the goal.
That was not the goal. The goal was, Lord, help me I had to learn that he was my husband, and he was my keeper, and the lover of my soul, the lifter of my head, my provider.
All those.
Yes, and that I got to a point where I just enjoyed life, and I enjoyed me. I was loving myself in the way that he created me to be.
And then you were healthy enough for a relationship.
Yes.
Which is a great, so okay. We've just touched on some of the surface things here, but I think you get enough. What's the website for the book that people want to check it out?
You can go to brendacrouch.com, and I've got everything about the book on there. And I'd love to connect with people there, and it's available on Amazon.
You are a people person.
I am.
You probably answer actually most of the email that people send to you, don't you?
I do try to answer all of them.
I figured you that time. That's great.
Thank you.
That's so hard for me. It's like okay. Well, you're gonna like what you get out here, and if you're relating to any of this, you will find huge encouragement. You will learn how to fight forward. So check it out. Check out Brenda Crouch's website. And thank you so much. Thank you for having the courage to stand up, especially in the church, and say, look, these things are going on. They have to be dealt with.
Yeah, we're stuck in this Me Too culture.
What do you mean
And
by that? Because isn't it healthy to a point?
to a point, because we need to hear, people need a safe place to be able to say, this happened to me, and to confront it. We've got to confront it. But if all we do is just rip the mask off the monster and say, oh, you're bad and you're a victim, everybody's a victim. And we've got to be able to say, what are the answers and how do we heal? Because I believe God loves the perpetrator as much. We know that, as he loves the victim. Most victimizers were victims themselves. And so I really believe that it's that the perpetrators of abuse also want to be free, Randy. They want to be free, but they don't know how to get there. And I address all of that in my book. And I just really believe that we're at a crossroads right now, and the church is a community that can really help. So we've got to stop being afraid of these issues and just provide a safe place. And God will provide what we need. And there are people trained in our communities that follow Christ. And I really feel like we've got to get them on board, because it's about getting the word in us, transforming from the inside out, and getting the counseling to begin to change our mindsets so that we can become what we were meant to be and get our identity back, which means we get our authority back against the enemy, and we can set people free.
That's some great truth right there. Pick up Brenda's book and learn how to fight forward. Hey, thanks for watching. Please share this video, follow us on social media, and subscribe to this channel.